We're on Rav Yaakov and Rav Yochanan, or if we may have actually been like a line short of where we should have ended. So
the last two words were Eina Atifa, but then I don't know.
Right.
That's just before Machaye Rav Nachman Ad Gove the Dika.
Ad Gove the Dik. That's as far as we
were a
got.
little bit before
Correct.
that, just a couple of words before that.
Actually, we got up to, I believe, Ad Gove the Dik. No. Okay. So the topic of discussion was.
What was it?
This was about certain things that were chova and certain things that are reshus. So the Gemara said that there was, in fact, it gave it a Rashi table, was pachas chova neser reshutz. Peichet zayin you have to do, or you have to not do. Neser you can, the oval can do it or not. This is about on Shabbos. This is all about Shabbos navelas. So the pay was for priyat harosh. They have to uncover the head. Chet with chazar sakar lachorov. If the avel is wearing a ripped garment, he puts the garment where you can't see the back. Zayin is zakifat hamita, where the bed is set up straight. These things the avel has to do on Shabbos. Cannot cover his head, cannot wear the rip outside, and can't have the bed overturned. The neser is ne'ilat sandal. He may wear shoes if he wants, or he may wear non-leather shoes if he wants. Tash mishamita, we said, looks to be also optional. And rechitzas yadayim raglayim b'chamin, and this is about washing in warm water in the arvis as you go into Shabbos. So that also looks like it could be. He's not required to do it. So the Gemara says, and then the Gemara answers this, that Rav says, Af priyat harosh reshus, that even uncovering the head is reshut. You don't have to uncover the head. You can still wear the turban down as they had done on the weekday. In the same way that the oval doesn't have to wear shoes for every moment of Shabbos. He can wear shoes and not wear shoes. We don't wear shoes at home, right? It's not a good sign or a bad sign. And you don't have to wash your hands all the time, besides hygiene and all that. There's no requirement that you have to wash, which you couldn't do in Avelis. So too, you don't have to necessarily take off the turban of a Tifis HaRosh. So Rav says that's also Rishus. So Shmuel says, Shmuel does not say that. Shmuel Maishno Nilas the sound of the Rishus. The lav Maishno Nilas the sound of the Rishus. The lav Kuli Almi Avide the Saime Nisane Priyas HaRosh Nami lav Kuli Alma Avide the Megle Rashayu. So Gemara says, why does Shmuel say that you have to uncover your head? Right, the same way that some people wear shoes or don't wear shoes, some people wear hats, some people don't wear hats. So Gemara's response to Shmuel Taimei, Shmuel had a very unique approach to how the turban had to be worn. Shmuel makes two statements, and the reason we're doing this because one of the statements will come back and the Gemara will discuss. Shmuel makes two statements about Avelis that were said together. One is any rip that was not done when the person is still angry, right, is not considered a kriya, because kriya is only while you are actually angry. While you are not angry, but angry in passion, in anguish, at the moment of actual sadness, right? It's done b'shas mita, at the time the deceased dies. We do it right before the funeral, right? If it's a graveside, to do it right at the graveside. If it's at a chapel, do it right then. The reason we don't do it usually at the time of Misa is people don't know how to do Kriya, all right? We had the whole thing about the collar, in the collar, out of the collar. And at the time of Levaya is still a time of what we call Shas Chima, when the person is still hot, they're still passionate about the sadness. So you make the rip and the rip really hurts. As opposed to, right, making a rip many days later. It's become old hat, got used to it already. So therefore that's not Kriya. Kriya is only when you're really empathically feeling the pathos of the moment.
Does a Kohen have the same obligation?
Kriya? Yes. Yeah, Kohen has the same. Kohen has an obligation for everything. First off, the Kohen is one of the Zayin Krovim. The Kohen goes on to the cemetery. If the Kohen is not, right, then the Kohen is not going to do Kriya. Kriya is only done now. What about you can do Kriya, as you'll see, for a Rebbe pass away, so they can do Kriya, but that's not related to the funeral, but a Kohen would do it as well.
So
okay.
Would do it,
so it doesn't. Once again, it does not have to be at the feld, right? It has to be b'shas chimum.
Right.
Right. So you couldn't do it days later.
Yeah.
Unless, as we'll see, the Gemara will say that for a parent you do it the entire week. Or if you change clothes, because the assumption is the pathos of the moment of losing a parent is so real, right? And continues even afterwards.
So if you change clothes, you make another rip, you're saying?
Yeah, you rip, yes.
I don't know if that many people did that, but you're saying in theory.
Well, the
Today
answer
we
is
do,
that,
today we do it like that?
yeah, yes, we do. For parent, yes, for parent.
I'm saying most
Yes,
people,
well, actually, most parents, most people sitting shiva for a parent don't change the clothes. The
that's what I'm
clothing.
saying. You're not gonna,
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
But let's say the situation was such that you did.
Right.
You have to make, sometimes, and that's what I said, the hardest thing, if you ask people, one of the hardest things about sitting shiva is not being able to take a shower. It's the first thing you do. And the second hardest thing is wearing the same clothing, same outer clothing that you wore for the whole week. You don't change. In our society, that is actually very unusual, right? Most people are not going to wear the same shirt for 7 days, right?
For sure.
Especially in the summertime.
Even in the winter time,
anytime.
anytime. Most people, not saying it's good or bad. That's just how society's set up. Okay, except you send kids off to camp and they don't change their clothes. They come back with the same shirt that they wore, right? And the clothes are still packed away nicely in the suitcase.
And they're happy.
And they're happy, right? We've had kids like that, and you have to peel the undershirt off. Okay. So anyway, the Shmuel says two things. One's called kara she'ena b'shat chima me'eno kara.
Right.
And second thing Shmuel says, and this is the second thing, is what relates to what we're just reading now. B'chol atifa she'ena meutefet me'atifa yishmeilim ein atifa. And any wearing of the hat, covering of the hat, that's not like the Ishmaelites wore, which is the traditional Arab headgear that wraps the head completely, right? We gave the analogy like the terrorists, are dressed up. So that's not considered tifa the rosh. So that kind of dressing no one would do on Shabbos. People wear hats. People cover their heads. There are reasons where utilitarian why you want to cover your head if the weather is inclement. There are dress-up reasons that society used to have people dress up with hats. That was how it happened. But atifas yishmeilim, no one did except Yishmeilim. That was their signature moment. Like Jews had kippot, so the Yishmeilim had atifas yishmeilim.
Why would they copy that?
So the idea is it's simply a way to say that you are entirely wrapped up. Doesn't mean that you have to wear Arafat's kafiyah. It just means that the way the Ishmaelim who wrapped their heads, the Ishmaelim probably did it because they were in the desert.
Sand.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to sand and you want to reflect the light. Okay, all correct. The sand as well.
Yeah.
But that's simply a way to completely cover yourself. The Ovel covered himself completely. That's really an idea that we're minimizing who we are. That's why we cover mirrors, right? That's why, by the way, people are not that concerned about it today, but really, it's covering mirrors and covering pictures of people, even pictures of the mace.
You don't cover them?
No, they don't. People don't today. You walk walk into a shiva house. What's the first thing people do? Is they show you. Here's the picture. Here's my this relative, my that relative, the person that's saying shiva for.
Oh.
Right, but really, it means that's that people are not that careful about it today. But really, the idea is to minimize the tzura, the shape of a human being, because the shape of the human being has been diminished. So the ultimate shape of the human being is when you look in the mirror.
All pictures are pictures of the deceased? Like in general, all pictures?
I think it's all pictures of the deceased
and of humans in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm saying, but we don't do that. We don't do that. So don't run home and tell people that we're doing it.
But we should do it though, right?
We don't. I'm telling you, in a lifetime that I've seen people sitting shiva, in the most careful houses, people don't. I don't know. Maybe because we've gotten so used to seeing pictures. It's not really what it is, right?
We're so desensitized.
We're so desensitized.
Yeah.
It's like people listening to music during Sphira, right?
You listen to it in your car.
Right, because back 200 years ago, 100 years ago, if you wanted to hear music, you had to bring in an orchestra. Right? There was no recordings. The first recordings in the 20th century were horrible.
Yeah.
His master's voice, scratch, okay? I'm saying, but all I'm saying is the bottom line is the world is different. So pictures don't mean that much to us.
We don't listen to music now either.
No, we don't. I'm saying, but it doesn't mean you're driving in the car, you hear a commercial, you turn it off.
Well, that's something else.
Right? And for that matter, there are people who tell me they go for long drives, they have to keep the music on, they go crazy in the car. It's background music. It's not music that they're intensely listening to.
So, background music.
Right?
Some people can't do anything without
Correct.
music.
So, all right. So, so anyway, these are two things that Rabbi Shmuel said, and Mechvi, Rabbi Nachman, noted or clapped or pointed. He said, "Ad gove the dikna," until the height of the bottom of the cheeks. In other words, this was such a covering that it went all the way down to here. I can't even imagine what this looked like. This is what it's referring to, probably around here, the bottom of the hollow of the cheek.
Yeah, well, they say the way he has it here, which is really, you can see that this Ishmaeli,
Yep.
he has his lower, he basically covered the part of his cheek,
Right.
and this and that.
Yep.
Oh.
So you see, it covers your head and part of your face in a way. Right? Your lower face, your mouth, whatever.
Correct. Right. All right. So so this is the part we had done the last time. And the machlokas, therefore, Rabbi Shmuel and Rav is about whether you can wear a headgear on Shabbos or not. That will depend on how much of a headgear you need to wear during the week, whether you can still wear it as well during Shiva.
Shabbos.
So during Shabbos of Shiva. Now I told you we're not noheg today about the Satifa Sarosh altogether. Right. Though I said you will see periodically. It's usually someone who is, how can I use the term, very yeshivish, because outside the yeshivish world this doesn't exist at all. Where yeshivish world where they wear hats. So sometimes you'll see that the Ovel is wearing a hat and the hat is brim is pulled down, right? Because when you're yeshivish, you wear the hat in the back of your head. But this is the other way around. That's trying to mimic the best that they can do for Atif Sarosh. Okay, but that's not really Atif Sarosh. That's just kind of dipping the hat. Anyways, so this is back at so this is the Machlokas Shmuel and Rav, and now the Gemara says, or Rabbi Kiva and Yochanan says that Lo Shanu. When did we say that you have to take the hat off to show that it's Shabbos? Right? When did Shmuel say that you cannot wear a hat on Shabbos? So Rabbi Yochanan makes a chiddush. Lo shanu ela she'ein lo minolim baraglav. That's only when he's not wearing shoes on Shabbos. Avi yesh lo minolim baraglav. If he's wearing shoes on Shabbos, minolim mochichim alav. So this shows that the Avel understands that he's not dressed as an Avel. He's dressed un-Avel. You see he's wearing shoes. He wants to wear this turban all the way down. Gesundheit hate. The key is that, in other words, the turban itself is not a specific Avelus gear. It's an adaptation of a cultural headgear that Yishmaelim or other people wore. And therefore we're adapting it as a way to minimize ourselves. But if he's doing other things that shows that clearly he is breaking with the Shiva cycle on Shabbos, that's the whole discussion, is Shabbos mafsik or Shabbos is suspends it or it still exists, but he's showing that it is Shabbos, then you can even still wear the headgear itself, because you're showing in a different way that it's no longer really considered to be he's an Avel, or he's a Shabbos, he's showing a Shabbos.
Right.
Period. Now the Gemara goes back to the first statement that Shmuel said. Kol kera she'eno b'shas chimum enam kera.
The question, right? Is that true? I suppose you're saying, right?
Correct. Well, I'm reading it, and then the Gemara's going to ask the question. In other words, so we dealt with the second part of Shmuel, which was about the headgear. Right. Now we're going to go back to the first statement, which Shmuel said two things together, which is you have to make the kriya b'shas chimum when you're really hot in passions, and if you do it when you're not hot in passions, it's not kriya. So the Gemara says, va'amulei Shmuel. But there was a case where they told Shmuel, Noach nafshei de Rav. So they told Shmuel that Rav passed away. And you will remember that Rav and Shmuel go at it on every page of the Gemara, right? There's the duets, Abai v'Rava, right?
Yeah.
Rav and Shmuel, Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai. These guys come, Rav Asi, Rav Ami. So Rav and Shmuel, who are the earlier generations of Amoraim, and in fact Rav is really the very end of the Tanoim. It's like a swing generation. Rav is older than Shmuel, and as it would be, age caught up with Rav first. Rav passed away, and Shmuel was left behind. Shmuel was still living. This is an older Shmuel, but Rav was even older than him. In fact, there are a couple of times in the Gemara where the term is used, Rav Tanahu Palig, where the Gemara will bring a statement of Rav, Yeah, let me back up. You can have a Brisa argue on a Mishnah.
Right.
You can have an Amora argue on a different Amora.
Right.
You can't have an Amora arguing on a Mishnah.
Absolutely.
Right. Maybe an Amora is quoting a Tana who argues in the Mishnah, but an Amora against a Mishnah, that's a different level.
Right.
So the Gemara has a number of cases through Shas where Rav seems to argue on a Brisa, and the Gemara says, "How is it possible? Rav says this? The Brisa says the opposite." And the Gemara will give an answer: "Is Rav Tanahu Polig?" That Rav had the stature of a Tana, and therefore he can argue against the Brisa. What it really means to say is Rav is that swing generation. He really wasn't a Tana, but he's just the embers of the Tanaitic generation. So he still had the stature. Where if he disputed with a brisa, it wasn't a break. He wasn't over the fence. He was just abutting the fence. But that's never said about Shmuel. Shmuel was younger than Rav, and he's already on the Amor. He's surely 100% Amora. So the case is Rav dies, and they tell Shmuel that Nach Nafshid Rav. Kara alei tracer money. He ripped Kriya on 12 different garments. And it doesn't mean he ripped 12 one at the same time. So Rashi and Rishonim say it means he ripped 12 at different points when he was remembering Rav. He says Rav died, he ripped one garment. The next day he's learning something about Rav. Rav said, he remembers Rav died. So notice, over the course of a number of days or weeks, it's not clear, he rips Kriya again and again. There's nothing wrong, I should say, it is proper to rip Kriya for a person who is a teacher. When your teacher passed away, your Rebbe Mufak, so to speak. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. That's logical. I don't know if I said this, when Rav Soloveitchik passed away, it was on Pesach. When Rav Soloveitchik passed away, it was on Pesach. That's a statement.
Okay, yeah.
Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, who was Rav Soloveitchik's son-in-law, but also a very serious Talmud of Rav Soloveitchik, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, who is in the Gush, right? Who himself now is an old man, right? Who said years later that he didn't rip Kriya because when he got the news, it was, I guess, Chol Moed or Yontif, because he was in Eretz Yisrael. When later on, when they actually started the Shiva, right? It was after Yontif, it was after the time of Chimum. So actually he was concerned about this. So he said he never really ripped Kriya. I think the family members must have ripped Kriya, but he didn't rip Kriya.
He held with Shmuel, clearly.
Correct. But he held not with Shmuel.
Well, the first statement is Shmuel.
Correct. But in this case, Shmuel rips 12 different garments, and therefore you see. So how could it be that Rav Shmuel says that you can only do it b'shas Chimum? And what did he say? Amar, and he said every time he ripped Kriya, he says, Azal Gavr Dahavi Mistafina Mene, the person who I was afraid of. Now, the person who I feared is gone. Now, what does that mean, the person who I feared? So it was like saying, if the cop is gone, you don't rip Kriya, you say Yehu, right? The person I'm afraid of is not here. It means I feared him because every time I had a kasha, or every time I had a statement, he would ask me kashas. Sure. Or I was concerned because he was a greater stature, and he knew how to learn better. So in other words, the person who instilled fear within me, who challenged me, right, is no longer here, and I feel it. He said, that's what we see every time that he would rip Kriya. And that's one example. That's an example of Shmuel ripped 12 garments and 12 times after the death of Rav, and ostensibly, the Gemara's question is not b'shas chima.
I was going to say, that supposedly assumes it was
12 different garments?
12 different garments at 12 different times.
Are you allowed to do that?
Yes. You passionately said, isn't it about Tashkis you're going to say?
That's one thing. I'm going to say that plus one more thing. What's his name was criticized for that? David Melech. All he did was rip a piece of clothing, and that's why he was cold in his old age or something.
Maybe. Yes, there is some interest. Yes, but this is almost like an involuntary kind of ripping. I don't recall what he was ripping, but there is a major something along those lines. Yeah. But you can ask that. You can ask that for the Avil who rips one garment. More do you? The Avil rips one garment at a levaya.
Yeah, right. One.
So it's also about tashkis. We break a glass at the chuppah.
So one isn't 12.
We break. I'm sorry.
One isn't 12.
but if one is bad is okay, maybe 12 is also okay. You're not used to it. We're not used to it, and the Gemara will have to explain why. Because for us, it obviously looks to be like it's excessive.
No, I understand the emotion. I understand. Just that we're supposed to have more control or something.
Correct. Well, then in fact that's what Shmuel. That's the argument. That's the question that's being asked on Shmuel. Shmuel, the first Shmuel, seemed to say the only time you do kriya is b'shat chimum when you're hot.
Okay.
So why is he doing it? 1, 1, 1, 1, right? It's up to 12. One more story, similar story. Sorry.
Yeah.
Amalei Rabbi Yochanan. They told Rabbi Yochanan, "Nach nafshe de Rabbi Chanina," that the Rabbi Chanina died, who also Rabbi Yochanan looked up to, who's older than Rabbi Yochanan. Karale Tleiser Itzla Milsa. He ripped 13. Itzla is like an outer garment, like a cape or a coat. Of Milesa is silk, right? So this is serious garments, right? You know. So, and what did he say? Again, the same thing. Omar, he said, Azal Gavra Dahava Mistabidamine. Okay? So the person who I was afraid of is no longer gone away. So this is the question against Shmuel. So Gemara's answer is the obvious answer. Shani Rabbanan. It's different with a great scholar who dies. The cave and the kol shaita midkre shmaitata, seeing that every moment they're something just they're.
That's my teeth. Sorry.
Seeing that every moment they're remembering their divrei Torah. So kashas chimam damim. It's like the time there's still people still engaged. They still realize and recognize the person is no longer there. So in other words, it's every time you mention this person, surely it's the beginning of when they passed away, people realize the loss again and again and again. Now you could argue that probably for a parent in many different ways, right? But in the eyes of Chazal, because Torah was paramount, the loss of a great scholar. We're not talking about just any scholar, but scholars whose statements are quoted throughout Shas, right? And by name, and who we know who they are, and the great wisdom they had, and the scholarly erudition and clever ingenuity. These people, their loss was felt on and on. Okay. Now, next line. Amalei Ravin bar Ada l'Rava. So Ravin bar Ada says to Rava, Amar Talmidcha Rav Amram. Your student Rav Amram said, very unusual term, right? He says, your student Rav Amram, maybe it was a different Rav Amram. Your student Rav Amram said, Tanya, we have a brisa, Avel kol shiva korah lefanav, v'mbal lahachlif machlaf. So this is once again meant to be like a question. The Rav Amram quoted and said there's a brisa that says for the entire 7 days the Avel has the rip in front of him. Doesn't mean he rips in front of him. Hakera shelo.
Like he's wearing.
His rip is in front.
Right.
V'imbal lahachlif machlif v'korea. And if you flip garments, that's what I told you we were going to mention. If you change garments, you have to rip it. You have to actually actively rip the new garment. B'Shabbos korah le'achorav. On Shabbos, you put the rip in the back, so it's not visible. And if you change clothing, you can change clothing, and you don't rip. Which, by the way, is la halacha, that Novel does not rip the garments on Shabbos, and a Novel can put on a new shirt for Shabbos. So you see once again that the Novel is ripping the entire week. It's not just, the assumption is Shat Chimum is going to be the very moment of the funeral. Right, the funeral itself, up to the funeral, but after that you begin the healing process. So Gemara says, okay, that's different. Kitanya hahi bechlod avi v'imo. Okay, this is about a parent. So taka for a parent, there's the shas chimum continues for the entire week, but any other relative it doesn't. And sometimes we find these are very difficult for us because there are people who have close relationships, right? And Chazal viewed the relationship about an intergenerational relationship to a parent and a child to be of a different kind of caliber.
So again, just so I understand that the first statement was brought to show that you could do it, or this is presumably brought to show you could do it not in Shat Chimum, is that it? But he says, but that's only a case of a parent, because that's like Chimum. In other words, when you read it through, I'm still trying to follow. Are they saying for you're sitting Shiva not for a parent? an ordinary, another relative, close relative, right? God forbid.
So if you're singing for another relative and you change clothing, you don't need to do kriya.
You don't. That's what I'm saying. You
Correct.
don't need. That's what it's saying. Right. Exactly.
But here,
That the Brisa implied that you did, but he's saying no, only for a parent.
Now, we look at ripping kriya as you have to do it.
Yes.
It looks almost like it's a knee-jerk response to the complete, utter sadness or yeush of giving up hope.
We see in Tanakh, they just spontaneously did it.
Right. It's like people get news and they sit down right away. That's like an instinctive response, right? We tell people, sit down before I tell you.
Right.
Or a person hears news on the phone and it's such terrible news. What's the first thing they do? They have to sit there and go, oy vey. They can't stand up.
Right.
That's a biologically instinctive response because the blood is rushing to your head. You're trying to process it, and the body therefore becomes weaker. So the same way, the instinctive response was they ripped clothing. They needed to find an outlet for it.
Right.
So at any rate, when we look at this, we say, therefore, if you change for a parent your garments during the week, you have to rip kriya. And if it's for not a parent, you don't have to rip kriya. It's not like you don't have to. It means that there's no need for it. In other words, the need is not there because it's not a kriya. Kriya is only at the moment of passion. Now, here's what the Rishonim do point out. The implication of this line is that for a parent, you can change a garment, but there's a price to pay. You have to rip it.
Right.
For a not parent, you can change a garment. You don't have to rip it. What's the implication, though? You can change a garment during Shiva. Right,
yeah.
It looks like
absolutely.
It looks like
it's clear. It's clear.
Right. So the number of the Rishonim point out the case that we're talking about changing was a case where you couldn't wear the other garment, or because maybe it was so schwitzed up you couldn't even tolerate it, or maybe the garment got so dirty, something happened to it, it got dirty, like it got muddy.
Or it did involuntarily.
So involuntarily you needed to wash this garment. You needed to wear something in the interim.
Right.
That's when you took out a second garment. But it doesn't mean that they don't understand this to be the ideal circumstance. You wear and then you change. You don't have to rip. You wear and you change and you do rip. Okay. For Shabbos, on the other hand, Shabbos is Kavod Shabbos. You do, right? You clearly do. In fact, the Gemara talks about putting the rip in the back, so it's not seen. Mm-hmm. All right. Now we've made a differentiation between the rip for a parent and the rip for a non-parent.
Right.
Correct? Mm-hmm. So the Gemara now asks about this rip for a parent, because you see the ripping for a parent goes all the way through Shiva. So Osan Karin Misachim O Ein Misachin. The rips that you made for a parent, can they ever be sewn up? Right? For us, in our world of plenty, no one's really going to sew up a shirt. Okay? Makes no sense.
It's also a jacket.
Correct.
Yes.
It's also a jacket. So
Both the shirt and a jacket?
for a parent, it's all the outer garments you normally wear. The question is today, what are the outer garments you normally wear? Our dress code has changed.
But you could easily wear a jacket, a sport jacket. I certainly cut the sport jacket.
So the answer is, if you're a type of person who wears a sports jacket, right? Boom.
Yeah.
See, then you do kriya on the sports jacket,
sure.
as well as the shirt for a parent, right? If you're the type of person, you come to shul and you see people dressed in all kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm.
People go to work in all different kinds of forms of dress.
I think for women, you don't really cut because of sneers.
For women, they
do a little bit of.
They cut it a little bit, and then they usually have pins. They pin it up.
Is that what they do?
They use safety pins. Yes,
yeah.
with sneers, correct. The Gemara talks about turning the garment around right away, turning it so the front is in the back. That doesn't really work with our garments. They're not that reversible, and surely there's no way to do that when they do kriya, right? But the funeral director has like little.
Today they have,
little safety pins.
Yeah, some have even another, like whatever, scarves and stuff on top of that.
Right.
Whatever, right?
But the bottom line is so at any rate, what about this rip for a parent? Okay, can it be sewn up after Shiva or not? So pligaba avur de Ravoshia ubar kapar. Is machlokas between the father Ravoshia and Bar Kapar, and you'll see the names in a moment why they play a role. Chad amar ein mesachin, v'chad amar mesachin. Some say, one says you can, and one says you cannot. Okay, and And the Gemara says, "Testayim de'avur de'Rabbi who de'amar emisachin." Let's try to prove who said you can't sew it up. The father of Rabbi Shaya said it. Why? Because we have a statement. Dam Rabbi Shaya emisachin. Right? Rabbi Shaya says you don't. So miman shmi who do you hear it from? Lav me'avua. Must have heard from his father. So of the two people arguing, Bar Kapor and Abu Rabbi Shaya, must have been this Abu Rabbi Shaya. So the Gemara says not true. Maybe Rabbi Shaya didn't hear this from his father. Maybe he heard it from his teacher. Who is Rabbi Shaya's teacher? Bar Kapora. Lo, mi Bar Kapor Rabbi Shmielei. Okay. So at any rate, so for another relative, you actually are allowed to sew up the garment, sew up the rip.
But here's a machloka though. Someone says yes, and one says no. Correct. Or am I wrong?
Right, and we passing for a parent a mesachin.
Right.
Okay, we passing an a mesachin. And we normally have a rule that halacha kidivrei ha'mekel ve'evel. I'm not sure this is mekel or kula chumrah. We passing for a parent, you don't sew it up. I remember my father had a shirt that he must have been for a sister he was sitting shiva for, and it was, you'd never see that today. He saved it for a painting shirt, right? He sewed it up. Wasn't the kind of shirt that you'd wear outside. Right. But yeah, we all have these shmata shirts. You painting whatever, right?
Shirts,
so that was, you would pull it out, and for me as a child, you used to see the rip that was sewn up. Okay.
Covered with paint.
No, we're so rich. We don't even look at this anymore. We
don't know how rich we are.
We don't. We really don't. We really don't.
Please.
We don't. We think we do recycling because you put little blue bins out.
Yeah.
The whole world used to recycle everything. Because they had nothing. Okay. Amarava. Avel metal be unclean betoch beisel. An Avel,
I'm nervous. What's an unkli?
An unkli is it's either a type of garment.
It must be like a more comfortable garment or something. No, maybe.
Right.
I'm just thinking, like, what do you want? He says, well, in his house he can walk around in an unkli. Oh, here, what does he say? Nira? Shemakor hamilahu.
The privacy.
Yavanit. He says it's Yavanit.
Red shirt.
On kolos.
And you can walk around the red shirt.
Mashbehu katzar.
Sudarian, what does he see here?
Rav Steinzal says it's something from a Greek word, and it seems like something katzar, short.
So it means
Square piece of
it means on Shabbos he could wear this unkli garment that had kriya on it.
He can?
He can. Wear at home.
At home.
But why would he want to
that
do
does or doesn't have?
That does. That
also has a kriya.
In other words, he's bitsina. So the unkli is either some kind of garment, or an outer garment, or an overgarment, or a hat possibly.
Rav Steinzal says it resembles a sort of beget tachton, like an under type of garment, katzar, a short one, shemagiad laberkayim. So it just goes to your knees. So it sounds like some sort of like I said, a smock, something you hang around the house in, a little bit, I think.
But the point of it being, this was an unkli that had a kriya on it.
Yes, yeah.
So the point of it being that b'tzina, you can carry out minhagim of avelis on Shabbos. You can't. We've talked about this overtly. You can't show off avelis, but if you're at home and you're b'tzina, it's okay. So the chiddush is that you have this kind of smock garment or whatever it is that could be worn at home. It had a kriya on it from the avelis, and you can still wear it on Shabbos. B'toch beiso.
What about the honor to Shabbos? It's not doesn't override it.
So I guess it's not dishonor to have a rip on the garment. Right?
Well, Shabbos you got to put your best clothes on, right?
Okay, but you're home. So the answer is when you're half dressed at home, you're not wearing your best clothes.
Well, you got to have Shabbos clothes. It's got to be different.
The point of it is this was the Shabbos clothing, but he double used it as for a kriya.
This was a Shabbos clothing. Right. That's a good answer.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm telling you. I think back to my father who had this shirt, and I remember seeing it multiple times. It wasn't like, by the way, it was painted.
It was drops on it.
Yeah, it was he wore it like a junky shirt.
Yeah.
You couldn't even imagine this. Anyways, back at the ranch. So that's the unkli b'toch beiso. Abaye ashkechel Rav Yosef. Abaye so Rav Yosef the parsley sudrei areshe the azov aseh b'beisei. So he was wearing a hat in his house. Sudra is, or I'm sorry, kerchief. A sudra is like a handkerchief. So he's wearing some kind of shmat on his head. It's not really a shmat, it was meant to be like that. Think of a kerchief that a woman wears, which is meant for this. Okay, so he had this male kind of kerchief on his head. The azov of the azov, he was going into his house. So Amalei, so Abai said to Rav Yosef, Lo savale mar ein avelos b'Shabbos. Don't you hold that you can't do avelos on Shabbos? His response was, Amalei hachem Rav Yochanan, devarim shebetzina knowing that you can use things privately. You can carry out the days of avelos, and that's not considered being disrespectful to Shabbos. You're home, you're private, nobody sees it, therefore it's still okay. So he was wearing the hat. It was not a tifas yishmaelim, it was some kind of hat. It's a hat that clearly looked like they wore it on avelos, right? Because they was, I guess, larger or more closely tight-fitting, and he was wearing it at home as well. Why would he wear it? Why not?
Again, we talked about, does Shabbos actually cancel avelos, or does maybe his attitude? It's like like you say, in private he's saying, I'm still in avel, it's still Shabbos, so
no one says that avelos is over, but publicly, by your displaying avelos, you're actually impacting upon. Right, the Shabbos, the only Shabbos of everybody else. Right. And by the way, this is the whole theme that runs through Shabbos and Yontif. Yontif is a higher level. Yontif is Simcha. Shabbos is Oneg. Yontif is Simcha, which is why Simcha stops the Shiva or stops the Shloshim. Correct. Now the Avel is still sad.
Sure.
But you can't see the Avel's happy. The answer is he may be sad, but communal happiness overrides personal sadness.
Absolutely.
So therefore, once again on Shabbos, you can't display personal attitudes to show that you're an Avel. You could do it, however, in your house. Okay. The Mishnah talked about Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and the Mishnah is back on. Mishnah was on the Yotet. So the Mishnah says, it talked about the 3 days before, about Shabbos is Olav Eina Mafsekes, Regalim Mafsikim, Yotet Manalef. In Rabbi Lezer Omer, it's the second half of the Mishnah. Matnitan is in the middle of the page, Yotet Manalef. The Matnitan is about halfway, about 60% into the page. People have it? No, don't have it?
Yeah, I have it here. So what's
because the second half.
No.
Yeah, before Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Lezer Omer.
Asheres Keshavos?
Actually, before that, the 2 forwards before. Rabbi Lezer Omer, Mishachav Beis Hamikdash Atzeres Keshavos. So the assumption is that all Yom Tovim will stop the Avelos. However, it comes along Rabbi Lezer to say that once the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Shavuos would be considered like Shabbos, which doesn't stop the Shiva.
The Shavua of the Shiva.
The Shavua of the Shiva,
right.
But simply suspends it for that day. Right? The difference between Atzeres when there was a Beis Hamikdash and Atzeres when there isn't a Beis Hamikdash, Shavuos when there was and Shavuos when there is Shavuos for us is a 1 day, for us in Chusla it's a 2-day thing. Right? But it's over before we blink.
Right.
Especially in Eretz Yisrael, it's 1 day. In the Beis Hamikdash, they came and they brought karbanos for the week afterwards. So it was not possible to even accommodate everybody on 1 day. So they brought the korban chagiga, the korban olas riyah. So the entire week of Shavuos and the 6 days following were days of semi-festivity. You felt it. So it wasn't Yontif, but it was a Yontif. It was like a Yontif. The only remainder we have in our calendar is that we don't say Tachnun for the week after Shavuos. So that reminds us that it was a semi-festive day. So when the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, comes along Rabbi Lezer to say, oh, guess what? Well, Shavuos is simply like a Shabbos. It's a 1 day, like Shabbos is 1 day, Shavuos is 1 day. And therefore, it won't stop the Shiva. Rabbi Gamliel Omer, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim K'Regalim. Rabbi Gamliel comes along to say the different statement, that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is like a regal, which means that
it cancels everything?
It cancels
even
everything.
Even though they're only 1 or 2 days, right?
Correct, even though they're 1 or 2 days.
Right.
It's exactly the opposite, right? And V'chachamim Omrim Lo K'divrei Zeh V'Lo K'divrei Zeh. El Atzeres K'Regalim Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim K'Shabbos. The third sheet on the Mishnah is that Shavuos is always like Yontif, even after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is like Shabbos. Why? Because Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur are 1 days, they're single days. On Rosh Hashanah, it's a Yom HaRicht of 2 days, and they're not festive days either.
So the theme is an oneg.
So the theme is not oneg. So you could argue that oneg, the supreme happiness of Simcha of Yantif, is going to override Avelis, the communal happiness. There is no communal happiness on Rosh Hashanah. It's not a sad day, but it's a Yom Adin, it's a solemn day. Yom Kippur, surely. So therefore the Chachamim say that Tzeres can be like Yantif, regardless of Beis Hamikdash. Rosh Hashanah is going to be like Shabbos. By the way, we paskin. Once again, I think it's because the Hilchos Halacha K'divrei Mekel Be'avelis that both Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are going to be like Yom Tovim. And stop dead in its tracks the Shiva or the Shloshim.
So we're not Mekel, right?
So we are Mekel in terms of keeping less of a Shiva.
Yeah, right. In that sense, yeah. Right.
That's what it means.
Right.
Okay, we're doing less of what we normally need to do. So we do both ends. We follow both the more Mekel part of both opinions. Okay, let's begin this piece. So let's go back to Daf Dalam Alf. So Rav Elazar Rav Mishachar Beis Mikdash Shatzeres K'Shabbos. Rav Gittel Bar Menashe Mashmuel. Halacha Rabbi Gamliel. So he says the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, who said that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is going to be like the regalim.
He said he was the one who said Atzeret was like Shabbos.
No, that was Rabbi Elazar said Atzeret was Shabbos. Rabbi Gamliel says Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is Regalim. Okay, so they didn't quote the full line in the Mishnah.
Sorry, but it's
our Gemara quoted Rabbi Elazar Mishchar Beis Hamikdash Atzeret Shabbos v'chula. The next part of the Mishnah says Rabbi Gamliel Omer Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim Kiregalim,
but not Atzeret, not.
He doesn't talk about Atzeres, and then we have the third opinion that Chachamim say, right, that Atzeres is going to be like Regel, and Rosh Hashanah is going to be like Shabbos.
Right.
So this statement, Rav Gittel Bar Menashe says that we paskin like Rabbi Gamliel. Okay. Now, what happens here is the Gemara says many times when you have a statement halacha Rabbi Gamliel, there are two ways halachas are mentioned. Some will say halacha is to do this or not do this.
Right.
The other version is halacha is like Rabbi X.
Right.
Rabbi X and not Rabbi Y.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say the halacha is like do this or don't do this, it's very clear what you do.
Right.
You may be confused who said it.
Right, but it's clear what you do.
But what to do, right? When you say halacha Rabbi Gamliel, the problem with this kind of tradition is you're not really quite sure. You think you're sure about what Rabbi Gamliel said, right? But maybe Rabbi Gamliel said something else in a different case.
Right. Because
these traditions were passed on in a short format. So the Gemara has a different version. The first version is that when Salach Rabbi Gamliel, it's Rabbi Gamliel in our Mishnah about Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Ikad the Masne Lahad Rav Gittel of Rav Menashe. Some say no, that the Rabbi Gamliel who paskin, that the statement of Rav Gittel of Rav Menashe said we paskin like Rabbi Gamliel is a different story, a different business altogether. It has to do with Avelis. It's not completely from a different planet. It's an Avelis halacha, but it's not the halacha about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Atzeres. And it's the following case: Kol Lamed Yom. Tinok Yotze Bechek V'nikbar B'isha Achas U'shnei Nashim. That when a child dies within 30 days, the child is not buried in an aron, but a chek is like something you can carry in your lap, here. So it's something very small.
Cabinet.
A cabinet. Is that what they call it? Translate cabinet?
It says in the bosom.
There are expressions they carry something.
Just carry it as a child, and then just carry it b'chek. They carry it means they carry it without anything.
It's in the bosom, just carry it like that.
But they carry the body. The body was wrapped and they carry it out.
I'll just carry it like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what it means. So b'chek means actually b'chek in the actual in bosom. V'nikbar, and it can be buried. Now, there not a lot of people went out for this kind of levaya because
no one knows the kid.
No one knows the kid. In other words, people normally come to a funeral.
Oh, but
right?
I know somebody.
People come to a funeral to give kavod to the mace. The truth is, in our day, probably people come to the funeral to give kavod to the chayim.
We're going to say, exactly,
Right.
yeah. And the mace, both.
Right. But
sometimes you don't know who it is, but you know the family.
correct. You go for the family, and you're paying your respects really to give respect to the family, not to the deceased. But many times people go for the deceased. That's the real mitzvah of kavod mace. So in the case of a child who did not live for 30 days, so the child does not have a history. It's a tragic event. And the other part is, if the child did not live for 30 days, there's a halacha. It's almost like a nafel. It's almost like a fetus. Didn't really establish its existence. It's viable. It needs to be buried. It's a childbirth death, right? It's a baby death. It's very tragic.
The same as a stillborn as well.
No. This child was alive. This child was actually alive.
Exactly.
It's actually the child actually no. And there was a many cemeteries used to have a place, right, for child burials.
Yes.
When I go to New York, I go to the cemetery with my in-laws, because my wife's grandparents are married on the other side. And I walk over against the wall, and you see some of the little tombstones.
It says
little
one month, 3 months, right?
Yeah, for a week. The kid was 1940s or 30s. The kid was 7-8 days or whatever.
For sure.
You know, and I was just looking at them, how long they lived. It was just sad.
Yeah. I don't remember which funeral director it was. I don't know if it's here in this town where the funeral director used to cover the cost of this.
It was like a free, they would just.
They would give it free, I guess the cemetery would give the karka. They had the karka set aside. What's the real cost? I mean, the cost of an undertaker or what? Are the coffin, the tahara, the
clothing,
the limo, all this kind of stuff, all these professional fees they tack on, and people have to want to come there, so things have to look nice, but no one comes for a baby. So they would. I don't know. I can't recall if it's here with Steels or it's a different town.
It's also shorter. The plots are smaller.
Yeah.
The plots are definitely smaller.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's about a child that's up to 30 days old, and the chiddush is there wasn't a lot of people going out there. So the question is, was there a problem of yichud? Right. So because you only have a few people are going, that's the last couple of words on this line. Mm-hmm. So the Gemara says, or this Brisa says, that one woman and 2 men is not a problem of yichud. Now, this sounds very funny. It's really hard to explain it in a modern era where all kinds of things occur and there are no limits whatsoever. But Chazal seem to feel that if the 2 men were together, they would each behave, and that each would protect the other one from sinning with the woman. Mm-hmm. But the issue of yichud is not about actually sinning. The issue of yichud is there's a potential. Nobody's watching. There's no apostropos. There's no guardian for a rayos. So therefore, 2 men and 1 woman was not considered a problem. Okay, it was never considered a problem. Aval says the last couple words, lo be'ish echad u'shtei nashim. But 1 man and 2 women was felt to be a problem of yichud. That is normally a problem. And somehow Chazal felt, it's once again hard to really explain in the modern society, that 2 women were not as careful to protect each other with this one guy. Okay? You and your rampant imaginations can probably think of all variations which could work in both 1 and 2 and 2 and 1. Mm-hmm. But apparently Chazal felt this was the standard of those days.
So there's only 3 people.
No,
3 people come to the funeral. That's
correct. How many people went? How many people?
There's no kaddish for a 30-day-old kid.
Well, I think so.
I think anything less than 30 days is considered non-viable.
Right. They could have a bris.
So the answer is they has a bris, and if the child dies before the bris, they do the bris before they bury the child.
Yeah.
So chance of the child dies before 30 days. Either there was a tragic accident, or the child was ill from the beginning.
Yeah, he just wasn't viable.
Right.
Yeah.
So in probably say 95 or 99% of the cases, the child did not have a bris, but the bris is done before the child is buried. Fascinating.
There's no kaddish to sit over.
There's no kaddish. I'm telling you, it's really just burying the kid.
But they also give a different. No, that's not mixed up. I was thinking they give a different name, but that's for a stillborn, I think.
Well, that's where correct. Though they give a name actually. They give a name because the child without a bris does not have a name.
Yeah.
They give a name at the
They
grave.
give a different kind of name.
I don't know. Maybe
It's definitely, I don't remember what it is. A child who lives but doesn't live a full 30 days.
it's considered not viable.
Non-viable,
Yeah.
right from the beginning in that sense, but it's not the same as a.
Is there a stone? There's usually like
It just says Tinuk.
yeah, probably Tino.
Maybe.
It could have
Tinuk.
been at the bottom of the BAYT.
Because anything after that is like a regular child, right?
There's a section, but I don't know where. Right when you come in, with
against, there's a road that runs down
correct.
the side, and then right at the end of that road where it comes like a triangle. The
It
point
just says
there,
Tinuk, it doesn't say...
I think a couple of them just said Tinuk, and there's one there's actually it's a stone, a full-blown. The parents must really want a stone.
I thought they had, I seem to remember they give a name, but not a name like a person would have, like Avraham Moshe. They give a different kind, I can't remember, a different kind of name, like for
I don't know.
an
There's
angel
like
or something.
a couple of them,
Seem to remember
about
something
half
like
of them,
that.
they've got like flats, the stones like
Yeah,
flats on
flat
the
and
ground.
ground.
But there's one that there's a full-blown.
Standing.
Yeah.
The parents probably wanted something.
Yeah, it's a heartbreak.
It depends where, I guess. So yeah,
Right.
in our cemetery we have like a rule. We don't want one to stand out more than the other, right? But
Mhm.
I'm saying everybody's got their own. We have a section, right? And
Right. So at any rate, there aren't a lot of people there. So it's very possible that there were 3 people. It's very possible that there were 2 men and 1 woman, or 1 man and 2 women.
Sure.
So those it's not that unreasonable. Especially if someone's carrying this kid up a chayk, it might have been a woman carrying out a female child, female baby,
Sure.
right, baby girl. So this is a real situation. Now Abba Shaul says, that's at the top of the next line, top of the next page, on BAYT, makes the obvious statement that in this kind of situation, the laws of Yichud are very different. Because the people who are there, and they're coming for a singular purpose,
What a purpose.
really have their minds very, very rooted, right? They're not going to, fool around, so to speak. So Abba Shalom nashim. Okay, it's even 1 man and 2 women, even though this is normally could be a situation of yichud, right? But they are so focused on the avelos, and they're so directed to the funeral that they're not going to do anything else. And v'einom dimalav b'shura, they don't stand. If there are other people there, there is no shura that you stand to wish of the nichum to the avelim. V'einom dimalav berachas avelim, and they don't say the brachas of avelim. There was a bracha that they said in the town center. We don't really say it anymore. It's called Berachas Avelim. They would say Brachova Shalir when they came back, and they don't say Tanchume Avelim. They don't say Hamachi Menachem Eschem when they visit the family during the Shiva. Okay, it's considered that child was not viable. Ben Shloshim. Okay, if the child makes it to 30 days, right? So now we've reached 1 month. Yotzei B'Luskama. Luskama is a type of small box. So that's not just simply being carried out. That's formalized already. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Lod luskama hanitelas b'kasiv ela hanitelas ba'agafayim. This is not a box that you can hold b'kasiv on your shoulder, but it has to be held by agafayim, is by 2 arms. In other words, 2 people have to hold this. If you have a box, so you prop it up like carrying lumber.
It's not that big.
So you could, but that was not considered b'kavadik. I know when they carry the few soldiers, right? They're carrying like this. That's the 1 person. That's 6 people, 6 pallbearers, right? But this was more than 1 person was carrying this, even though it was a small box. V'yom dimalav b'shura, and for 30 days old, they set up a shura for the avelim. V'yom dimalav berachas avelim, and v'tanchume avelim, and they say tanchume avelim, that's Hamachi Menachem Eschem, and so forth. Ben Yud Beis Chodesh Yotzei B'mita. If the child is 12 months old, then they go out in a regular beer. Okay, a mita was like they carried them out. Think of this as they did not really have coffins in those days. They had some kind of bed that they carried them on, a stretcher.
A stretcher, yeah.
Like a big stretcher, like an Eretz Yisrael.
Is that what you do in Eretz Yisrael? They use a stretcher sort of thing?
Yeah, yes.
And then the person's wrapped up in tachrichim. It's not...
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never...
Yes.
Oh yeah, you never seen them? Oh, it's quite a sight. I mean, when you're not used to it.
No, I never saw it. I don't know.
I'm telling you, it's quite a sight when you
All right, and we'll do a few more lines because there's long brisa here. So Ben Yud Beis Chodesh Yosef B'mita, Rabbi Akiva Omer, and Hu Ben. So this is 12 months. This is 1 year, right? So 1 year already, it looks like it's a regular child.
It is.
It is a regular child. So that's already big enough that you kind of do the whole, like a regular funeral. So Rabbi Akiva Omer, Imhu ben shana ve'vav keben shtayim, who ben shtayim ve'vav keben shana, yotze b'mita. So in other words, if he's 1 year old, but he looks like 2-year-old,
he's a big kid, or he's 2 years old and he looks like a 1-year-old.
Right.
Right? I guess he's saying it doesn't matter how physically developed the kid is for his age. He's the same thing, right? He's
correct. Correct. In other words, I guess he's saying really that you have to be 2 years old to go on a mitah. But if you are a year and your Ivarim are like 2 years, or you're 2 and your Ivarim are like a year, you still go on a mitah. But it looks like, according to Rabbi Akiva, it's a 2-year limit to go into the full-fledged mitah. Okay? Rabbi Shmuel Elazar Omer Hayotib mitah Rabbi Matzhiven Alav. If a person goes out on this mitah, this is the regular funeral beer, so then people they turn colors, they begin to cry over him. That's what it means. They turn to the mace and they cry. Ein Yotze Alav mitah, ein Rabbi Matzhiven of love. Okay, the many people don't cry over him. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer Nikal Rabim Masaskim Imo Ein Nikal Rabim Ein Rabim Masaskim Imo. If many people know the child, then many people come to the funeral, right? If not. Okay. What does it mean Rabim Masaskim Imo? Mahain behesp in terms of giving hespedim. Okay, let's just, well, you know what? We'll just finish up this brisa. Rabbi Meir b'shem Rabbi Shmuel Omer Aniyim b'nei shalosh Nashim b'nei chamesh. That the date that we look at when people are going to give the hespedim and cry depends on the status. If the child is coming from a poor family, it's even when the child is 3 years old, we give it more kavod. For an asher, it's not less than 5 years old.
That's surprising, eh?
Because an ani feels it more. The aniyim felt dependent on the kids. The ashirim did not.
There was a life insurance policy.
Correct. Rabbi Yehuda Mer Mishmo Aniyim b'nei Chamesh, Ashirim b'nei Sheish, b'nei Zekenim k'bnei Aniyim. So Rabbi Yehuda had a variation on this, that Aniyim were 5 years for the big kavod, Ashirim were 6, 1 year older, and Bnei Zekenim, old people who really relied upon their kids, right, were like Aniyim, only 5 years old. And on this, Rav Gittel Bar Menashe, Rav Halacha Rabbi Yehuda, Sha'amar Mishum Rabbi Yishmael. So this was the statement that we thought it was. It wasn't even a Halacha Rabbi Gamliel. Our version is Halacha Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Sha'amar Mishum, Rabbi Yehuda Sha'amar Mishum Rabbi Yishmael. That of the opinions mentioned here, whether it was 2 years, 3 years and 5 years, or 5 years and 6 years, we're going to follow the second opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Rabbi Shmuel. On this is what Rav Gittel and Rav Menashe came along to say. There is a halacha mentioned according to one opinion, which says in the name of Rabbi Shmuel. So this is the variation of the statement of Menashe Marav to what we had before. The first version was the Rabbi that was talking about the halacha of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. The second version has to do a completely different.
Nothing to do with that at all.
Right, it has to do with Avelis, but it's a completely different situation. It has to do with the ptira of a baby or a young child. Okay, we'll stop here. All right.